In this video, we're going to go over the second issue in the Jurassic Park Raptor line of comic books, which picks up only 3 days after the events of the original Jurassic Park. Now, if you haven't seen the first video going over the events leading up to this part of the story, then feel free to check it out and then come back to part 2, so you can be caught up. To quickly summarize for the rest of us though, after Grant and Sattler returned to the island making sure the American government had found and recaptured all of InGen's dinosaurs and disposed of any nests, the pair come into conflict with a man named George Lawala, who was on the island to procure raptors for forces unknown to us as of yet. Grant and Sattler were captured by Lawala along with 5 juvenile raptors and are headed for his buyer by boat. Ellie awakens Alan in the belly of a large steel cage used to house large animals, and in a cage directly beside their own, the raptors are kept for their voyage across the ocean. Grant takes his belt off and attempts to use the tongue in order to pick the lock and escape. However, in the middle of doing so, the two scientists notice the raptors paying attention to what they're doing, and witness them climbing on the sides of the cage and attempt to pick their own locks with their saurian claws. Lawala enters the room and discovers Grant's attempted escape, humoring him. Grant breaks the tongue of his belt off into the lock and proceeds to argue with the hunter about his lack of respect to the creatures he's dealing with. Lawala knows nothing about Velociraptors and yet treats the situation as casually as normal game. This doesn't worry the hunter as he feels he's dealt with worse before, and sprays the raptors with a canister of sleeping gas before doing the same to the doctors. Before they pass out, Ellie and Alan frantically attempt to tell Lawala about the raptors' attempted escape, but black out before they're able to. In the meantime, Lawala has the cargo of his boat transported to the bay of a large plane he's obtained, and ascends to the skies. Back on Nublar, Dr. Fisher and the General locate Dr. Grant's jeep and come to the conclusion that the pair is missing, and possibly off of the island, putting all surrounding military commanders in the region on high alert. Back in the base hospital, we're greeted with the familiar presence of a certain chaotician undergoing recovery. A soldier fills Malcolm in on the situation and tells him both Grant and Sattler have left the island. Malcolm finds that rather odd, as they need a boat and neither of them possessed one on the isle. And just now, waking up from the effects of the gas, Ellie and Alan start their morning with the sharp talons of the raptors attempting to slash them from the outside. The raptors have picked the locks of their cage and are now free aboard the plane. They begin to pick the lock of Drs. Sattler and Grant's cage in an effort to kill the pair. Luckily, the dinosaurs are unsuccessful due to the belt tongue Grant broke off in the lock earlier. Once the raptors lose interest in the cage, they continue to hunt on the plane, stalking about and looking for any other passengers in this strange new environment. The pilot of the plane addresses Lawala on the apparent weight shift in the cargo hold, prompting Lawala to take up arms and investigate for himself. He tells the pilot to lock the door behind him and proceeds into the plane on the lookout. He reveals to us that he had to get the biggest plane available because he didn't know what size raptors were, and that he really doesn't know anything about these creatures and isn't prepared as he'd... Lawala sees the raptor behind him and dodges its attacks. He takes aim in the raptor's mouth and... Grant tells the man if he'd only listened before, he would know the raptors were trying to pick their locks earlier, and now they've escaped completely. Lawala takes his large knife out and removes the tongue in the lock before freeing the doctors, and handing them guns. Grant says helping him is the last thing he'd do, under any other circumstances. But these are the ones we have, Doctor, Lawala replies. The trio begins their search for the other raptors in the cargo hold, and Lawala begins to feel uneasy about this hunt. He knows nothing. He's no idea what he's up against, and... The raptor falls over some crates after a bad launch at the hunter, and as soon as it gets up, Lawala fires a round into the dinosaur. The pilot, desperately fretting for his comrade, puts the plane on autopilot and takes a weapon for himself, coming to help Lawala. George almost shoots the man when he notices his unexpected presence, and the two share a friendly laugh before... Lawala fires his gun. But it's too late. Ellie hears the commotion and, fearing for Alan's safety, runs to the noise's origin. Seeing Lawala and the pilot dead on the floor, Ellie aims her gun at the dying raptor, but decides to put a tourniquet on its wound instead of finishing the animal off. It's too weak to fight back as the artery is spilling such a large amount of blood, and Ellie can't kill this miracle of science she feels pity for. Unfortunately, the raptor's sibling behind her doesn't feel the same. Grant fires a shot off at the stalking dinosaur and leads it into a large crate. The other follows, and both raptors are soon contained once Grant fastens the wooden bars along the entrances of the box. Putting the crate on a cable, the scientist opens the door of the bay and suspends the raptors above the open drop of several thousand feet, and unwittingly causes the autopilot to go crazy after the sudden weight shift. Grant runs for the controls of the plane, and before he can fall out of the sky, pulls back on the controls and starts his aerial climb. The heavy crate suspended in the back creates an unforeseen drag in this attempt, and pulls them back down into another descent. They're still shifting weights somehow. Ellie turns and heads to the bay to investigate, finding the raptors breaking free of their wooden box. She tries to cut the line but can't slice through the metal cable. They continue to descend, falling faster and further, and the inevitable begins. With the plane downed over unknown territories and the Raptors attempting their second escape, anything is possible in the next issue. This one was a lot more action-packed and thrilling in my opinion, and way better than the first one. I'm eager to see what happens next in the story, and hope you all are too. Malcolm seems to be coming back into the fold of things, and that's always a plus in my book. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video, and hope you enjoyed it. If you feel like I deserved it, I'd appreciate the like, and hope you consider subscribing to see more content from me. As always guys, take it easy.